And the saying goes that the post-dinner meditation, but a great place to be to spend ourselves the journey of thinking after dinner. So the theme that Professor Anthony would speak with us, creative initiatives in city planning, is a very important challenge of the time as it has been from the dawn of humanity. We can open ourselves a few related things. For example, city, the significance of city in human condition. We just had a conversation about town planning in Indus Valley civilization. And what a beautiful art of planning it was, the sanitation, the sewage system, and the city was also interlinked with the world through maritime networks. Now, in contemporary world, in modernities, now cities have played a very important role. But along with the issue of economics and politics, what also needs attention is the city as a space for imagination, a space for free thinking. Therefore, the rise of the modern world is connected to the kind of public spheres, public spaces of open meeting and reading newspapers and imagining the world differently. Therefore, cities are not just knots and bolts. Cities are also places of being. To relate it to philosopher Martin Heidegger, the notion of dwelling. And it is not that authentic life is only lived in the rural setting. We are in a conference with Gandhi. But authentic life also can be lived in the city spaces. Therefore, a sense of dwelling. And are our cities providing that? Our contemporary cities are so burdened with many challenges. Professor Anthony was mentioning how transportation challenge is an important challenge, but there are creative ways out of it. Transition town movement. UNESCO city of
Ananta bhai, I think there is a network issue.
Yes, very quickly, I'll just take 1 or 2 minutes. So, therefore, when we are talking about creative city planning, along with many current issues, but also the question of imagination, literature, creativity, and today, how cities also present themselves, not just as a global city of capital, but a cosmopolitan city of, bringing a place for bringing of literature, cultures, philosophies from all over the world. So this kind of creative town planning and city planning, vis-a-vis the current discourse of smart city in India. Smart city, the whole smartness is a part of modernity. But a great anthropologist almost 50 years ago, Ulf Hannes from Sweden, wrote a book called The Soul Side to discuss about the problem of neighborhoods and poor Afro-American neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. The soul side suggests that the question of the city is not just a question of smartness if it does not address the issues like injustice, therefore social justice and the city. But today maybe we would have to rethink David Harvey's idea of social justice and the city. The city also is a space of global responsibility. With climate change and climate collapse, what kind of initiatives a city could take, which becomes a very creative way of embodying responsibility, local, national, and global. So with this, some of these very preliminary thoughts, and we invite Professor Anthony to enrich us on this topic.
Yes, Professor Jerry Anthony, please unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm muted now.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes, yes.
great. Well, thank you very much. Professor Andir and Professor Anantagiri, for inviting me to this occasion. I'm delighted to be with you. The last couple of days, we've had very, very good conversations on various aspects of architecture, city form, and Gandhian philosophy. So I'm really happy to be on this forum today to chat with you a little bit about urbanization in India, the challenges of urbanization in India, and the opportunities of urbanization in India in the upcoming decade and maybe decades. By way of introduction, Professor Andhir really introduced me very well. I will just add a little bit to that. I ordinarily research social justice issues. I teach courses on land use law, on sustainable development in different contexts, sustainable development in India, sustainable development in Hong Kong. And I do a lot of research on affordable housing policies, looking at housing policies, analyzing the outcomes of housing policies, and suggesting new housing policies at the local, state, and national level that could make a difference in people's lives, primarily in the US. I have been engaged with India for a long time, primarily as a faculty member coming here since 2009, coming to India and since 2009, bringing students with me from the US to showcase and spotlight and point out to American students some of the amazing experiments in governance and urban planning that is happening in many, many Indian states. And also, since 2013, I've been coming to Northern India, to the state of Rajasthan, to work with community organizations there to bring about changes in cooking technology in villages in Rajasthan. So I've had a deep engagement with India, both as a teacher and a researcher, and I love the opportunity to share with this audience some aspects of Indian urbanism. So India, as you know, just became, last week, I believe, became the most populous country in the world. Much more than China, a few thousand people more than China as of last week. India's, of the total Indian population, about 34% lives in urban areas. So approximately, there are about 400 million Indians living in urban areas. According to economists, demographers, sociologists, and anthropologists, by 2050, about 300 or 350 million more residents of the country will be living in urban areas, not rural areas. In other words, well, let's assume 350 million people are going to move into urban areas in the next 20, 25 years. 350 million is just above the population of the entire US right now, which means in about 20, 25 years, Indian cities have to accommodate about the entire population of the country of the United States of America, and have to accommodate them in less than 20 or 25 years. This is a huge, huge, huge challenge for the country. It would be a challenge for any country, regardless of the amount of resources that a country has. If any country experienced the kind of urbanization or rural to urban shift that India is going to experience, and actually it has started experiencing already, then money alone is not enough. It's not about just throwing a lot of money doing the same old stuff as before, building roads and housing and water supply, sewerage, and all of that as before. It's a much, much bigger challenge. Add to that the legacy challenge that Indian cities have. Indian cities, like most global South cities, have numerous challenges in urban infrastructure and housing conditions. So, for example, not many Indian cities have 100% municipal water supply. Not many Indian cities have 100% sewage connection. Solid waste management in most Indian cities, and this is not just an Indian city phenomenon, it's a global South urban phenomenon. All across the global South, by and large, you have these problems. So solid waste is an issue. About 30 to 35% of the cities in the global South, including in India, are constituted by slums. So about a third of the population of urban areas in global South cities, including India, live in slums, where living conditions are often deplorable. So India not only has to take care of the legacy problems in urban areas, it's going to face a huge deluge. There is a tsunami of residents coming to Indian urban areas. And Indian urban areas have to really respond creatively, be very nimble, be very fast, and have to do things that have been that are different from what they've been doing for the last 40 or 45 or even 60 years, maybe right up from for the last 75 years. So since independence, what they've been doing since independence, they have to shift from all of that and do something different. So let me pause here and give some space to the moderator to ask me some questions or lead the discussion in a particular direction.
Yes, Professor Ananta Giri. So it was a very brief but very insightful deliberation. So, if you can briefly mention about your engagement with Rajasthan village regarding the environmental issues or planning for that matter, because when we think about Rajasthan, the way they deal with climate crisis, like the way they deal with water crisis, and their planning in that regard is very, very important and we have to learn a lot of things. And they did not invest any scientific infrastructure or for that matter. They just use their common sense, traditional knowledge, and that helped them innovative planning inside. So what is your experience with those Rajasthani villages? If you can bring your input or insight in that regard. Yes.
Okay, this is quite a story, Professor Abdir. This is quite a story that I'm going to share with you. It is going to take a little bit away from our main topic, but I think it's an interesting story. So with your permission, I'll talk about this because this is about villages, not about urban areas. But I think it's an interesting story because India is transforming. So let me get into the story. I have been engaged with villages in Udaipur district, 6 villages in Udaipur district since about 2013. And the story begins like this. Many professors from US universities come to other countries and offer study abroad courses. So one of my colleagues from the University of Iowa was hello. It seemed I got disconnected there briefly. I think I got disconnected. I'm back now. So one of my colleagues was teaching a course in Rajasthan on energy efficiency and alternate ways of energy. And Rajasthan, as you know, is a place that receives a lot of sunshine. And while he was teaching this course, he noticed that lots of people, lots of women, almost 2 or 3 times a week, they trekked from the villages to the outskirts of the villages to forests, and they chopped down a lot of forest wood and took it back to their homes and used that for cooking. My friend was really alarmed by this because Rajasthan does not have much vegetation. So, and all this cutting of the forest was leading to rapid deforestation. So as forests deplete, they attract less rainfall and then in the area, and that becomes a mutually reinforcing downward spiral. Plus, all the smoke from burning firewood contributes a lot of black carbon to the atmosphere, and that black carbon remains in the atmosphere for a very, very long time. It has microclimatic impacts in the area where this black carbon is generated, but it also has global climatic impacts in contributing to global warming. So he felt that the solution is very simple, that get all these people who are cooking using traditional cook stoves that in Rajasthan and in northern India are called chulas, which use firewood. He said, let's get them off chulas and get them to use solar cookers. So he arranged for solar cookers for many, many villagers, showed them how to use solar cookers. Everyone was happy, nice new device. The villagers were happy to get this device for free. My friend and his collaborators, his friends, were very happy to share this device with them. And they felt that they had a solution in place, and they went back to the United States. They came back a few months later, and they found that of all the solar cookers that they had distributed to all the villagers were using the solar cookers as storage cabinets. So therefore, he was worried, and he came back and contacted a team of us, what was going on, and then we joined his team and we started investigating. And our investigations reveal that, first of all, Rajasthan being a hot, dry place, traditionally, culturally, the people there cook very close to sunrise and very close to sunset. In other words, they cook early in the morning and late in the evening. But for the solar cooker, they can only cook during the daytime when the sun is up. So we were asking these people who have traditionally cooked very early in the morning, very early in the evening, to not do that, but instead cook right in the middle of the day. Second, because of the heat, people generally cook in shady areas, in front of the house or inside their house. But now, because of the solar cooker, we are asking them to cook in the hot sun. So that is another problem. So those are two problems why people did not use a solar cooker. There was a third problem. The third problem was this. A solar cooker can generate temperatures that are hot enough to cook vegetables and curries, but it's not hot enough to make the bread that these villagers have. And so to make the bread or the roti that the villagers have, they would have to heat up their chula. So if they're going to turn up and heat up their chula, they might as well cook all their meals on the chula. So those are three reasons. But the most interesting reason, and that we discovered after a very long time of questioning and probing, was this. Most families in rural Rajasthan live in joint families. So there is the older generation, a person and his wife, like in their 60s or so. They might have a son who, when he gets married, he brings his bride home. And then they have children. So you have the grandfather generation, the father-mother generation, and the grandchild generation. Usually the cooking is done by the bride who comes in. So the bride in the middle is the one who does the cooking once she gets in and is part of the family. And for about 20, 25 years, while she is the bride, she does all the cooking, closely supervised by the mother-in-law. And most mother-in-laws are supervising and micromanaging their daughter-in-laws. The only time this poor daughter-in-law gets freedom from her mother-in-law is when she goes looking for firewood in the forest. So the daughter-in-law was not going to use any alternative cooking technology that does not require getting firewood from the forest. And so these are the reasons why our solar cooker, my friend's solar cooker project, did not take off. So then we came back to the drawing board and tried to figure out what to do. So we knew that we could not replace the chula. We knew that we cannot replace the wok to cut firewood. So my friend and his PhD students designed a device that when used with the existing chula, so it's a very simple thing that can be used with the existing chula, reduces firewood consumption by 50% and reduces smoke by about 70 or 75%. And we've done a limited scale experiment of these new devices. They work very well. And we did this just before COVID. COVID hit, we had to halt our experiments. And now we are going to restart our experiments very shortly and see if this device gets adopted. In our limited experiment where we gave out 200 of these devices, we had an adoption rate of 72%, which is much, much higher than any kind of cook stove replacement program or experiment attempted in the last 100 years by many, many governments, by the British government before independence, by the Indian government through many programs, by the World Bank and the USAID in many, many chula replacement improvement programs in India and in many, many other countries. So my friends and I are anxious to go back to villages in Rajasthan, villages in Orissa, villages in Gujarat, and villages in Andhra Pradesh, and see if we can get equally high adoption rates in a large-scale experiment. If so, we would be able to help roll out this noodles that would help save lots of forests, but also save lots of women's lives. Every year, 12 Black women in India die from diseases caused by constant exposure to chula smoke. We want that to change. We don't want 12 Black women to die from this thing. So that's our Rajasthan chula experiment. It's nothing to do with urbanization, but it's a huge problem that is confronted with. And as India transitions, this is an issue that India has to really take care of.
Thank you, Professor Anthony Jerry. Because the idea of planning in India cannot be separated from the village planning, and that is something which we have to think about urban Indian planning, because it is the villagers who go to city and they spend time and they work in city. So it is a kind of cultural connection. And their infrastructure, actually, they use their infrastructure for their prosperity. So now I can see Professor Anantagiri. So I request Professor Anantagiri to have some 2 to 5 minute reflections, and then we'll invite Inti Pradhanji, because we have to wind up this session before. So Ananta Bhai, over to you.
So thank you, Jerry. Now, just we would like to know a bit about certain new initiatives in town planning. During our discussion, you told about Indore, very interesting in terms of waste management. But we also wonder some creative efforts in urban transport. And then you briefly mentioned about Hong Kong and Singapore, and in what way these cities, transition themselves from an earlier condition to the present condition. But with Hong Kong and Singapore also, what are some of the challenges? For example, we know Singapore is suffering from a challenge of authoritarianism. And Hong Kong is also now in an authoritarian trap. Therefore, along with the functionality of this city, but a city as a space of imagination, as a space of freedom, So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, firstly, let me speak a little bit about India's cities and the innovations that Indian cities are doing, right, along the lines of solid waste management, because that's a story that people need to know as well. So in the global north, people generally regard global south cities as problem spaces. They say that global south cities are not very well managed. They don't have enough water supply. They don't have enough solid waste management. Transportation is a big challenge, not enough housing and all of that. And all of those criticisms are by and large true. There are reasons, some historical, some related, rooted in the colonial history of many global south cities, but also related to the developmental stage of societies in global south cities. However, in spite of all the challenges, many global south cities are doing an excellent job or on one or more aspects of infrastructure, be it water supply or solid waste management or sewerage or public transportation or urban governance or urban finance. And one of the cities that is doing an excellent job and is getting a lot of attention is the city of Surat. Now, Surat is not a class one city. It's not one of those. It's a class one city, but not one of the big cities like Delhi or Bombay or Chennai or Bangalore or Ahmedabad. It's a fairly big city, but yet in the last 2 decades, it's made a remarkable transformation of its urban infrastructure. It has really modified and cleaned up the city. Solid waste management practices are amazing in the city of Surat, as a sewerage connection, water supply, and public transportation. All of this facilitated by innovations in urban finance, innovations in urban governance that other cities in India could definitely emulate. They haven't yet, but they can. Now, one of the cities that has done an excellent job on one aspect of city infrastructure that those of us on this call who have visited and been in India cities is this. Solid waste management. Many Indian cities have very poor solid waste management practices. Either they don't have good collection systems, they don't have good systems, they just warehouse solid waste and landfills. It's not really a solid waste management solution. It's not a sustainable solid waste management solution. Many Indians have this problem. And I don't think global north cities have really solved the problem too. Global north cities, there's a fantastic collection system. And then they put it in landfills that are very well managed and all that. But that really is not a good solution, not a sustainable. It appears to be a clean solution because the streets are cleaner, but it's not globally a sustainable solution. In any case, I want to talk a little bit about Indore. Indore is a city that, recognizing the problems that it has about solid waste, decided to constitute a solid waste collection mechanism, where solid waste from houses is picked every day and separated at sources to dry and wet waste. Solid waste from the city comes to a major sorting center where all the dry waste is sorted into 6 different categories and the wet waste 2 categories. The solid waste is sorted into 6 different categories, auctioned off from the recycling center, and different industries come and buy this dry waste, often cans or bottles or paper or cardboard. They buy it straight from that recycling center. And then the wet waste is divided into 2, as I said earlier. A large chunk of the wet waste is used to generate biodiesel that is then used to power the city's public transportation system. And about 1/3 of the wet waste is used to produce organic compost. And this organic compost is so rich in nutrients that farmers from around the city of Indore bid and secure contracts to buy this organic manure for a long period of time, like a few months or a year at a time, because they like the organic content of this manure, as well as they have this desire to have their farms and their products certified as organic. So what the city has done is turned a problem of solid waste not getting picked up into a fantastic opportunity. And in the process, they've done a couple of things. First, The streets in Indore are clean. Second, all the material that they collect from the streets is not warehoused in a landfill. It goes back to the economy. It goes back to some productive use. The solid waste goes to industries. The wet waste is used for transportation, and some of the wet waste for composting. Then that's fantastic, and that is much better than global north cities are doing. And the third thing that the city of Indore did was, in many, many Indian cities, there are lots of informal rag pickers who are in the informal sector who pick up some of this waste, they recycle some of this waste. All of them would potentially be out of work because of Indore's cleaning drive. So Indore identified all these rag pickers and employed them into this new solid waste management system. Therefore, the people, the informal sector people who are working in rag picking did not lose their jobs, which is also an amazing thing. Thinking about not only the environment, but also the social side of things. And from the economy side of things, the city, by using biodiesel from its own waste, is saving on fuel. The city, by selling off the organic manure, is making money. By selling off the dry waste, is making money. So it hits all three aspects of sustainability: the environmental aspects of sustainability, the economics and finance aspects of sustainability, and the social equity sides of sustainability. And now, since we're going long on time, I'll briefly explain what transportation innovation could be. Indian cities are aspiring to be a car-dependent society, just like US cities. In US, this car dependency is now frowned upon. Urban planners in the US are trying to wean away their cities from car dependency. And why? Because car dependency means lots of land is used for city development. People commute great distances, lots of energy is lost in commuting, lots of time is lost in commuting, and lots of emissions are produced from these gas vehicles that commute so much. So cities and urban planners in the US are trying to get away from a car-dependent society. My fear is that many Indian cities are trying to develop car-dependent societies, and if they succeed, then India would be doomed in a certain sense. The weather would be very hot, lots of land would be lost, and India's fight and the globe's fight against climate change would be lost if Indian cities become car-dependent. Hong Kong and Singapore many years ago decided that they do not want primarily a car-dependent society. So they built light rail and built stops on their light rail system. And at each of these stops, train stations along the light rail, they developed commercial and residential nodes. And so it becomes very, very easy for people to get out of their homes, get onto the light rail, go to work or go to commercial areas. And lots of land is preserved as open space. Many, many trips in Hong Kong, about 70 to 80% of the trips every day are made by light rail. And so lots of greenhouse gas emissions are averted. Lots of land that have been lost to urbanization is kept in pristine natural state, and people can enjoy a fantastic urban experience. So I'm sorry I've taken a long time and given very complex and detailed explanations.
Thank you, and I request Miniti Pradhanji to share her one question, and then we'll wind up the session.
Hello, I hope I'm audible.
Hello.
I am not able to hear many things because of some network issue probably. So thank you, Randir. I would like to thank Professor Jerry Anthony for his very nice presentation. So I have a simple question actually. So I just want to know what are the new measures being taken to avoid the water stagnation in the urban areas in India, particularly if you talk. I mean, there is no empty space. Empty space, I mean soil, is there to absorb the rainwater. So every little bit of rain gets flooded. So what are the new measures are being taken to avoid this? Thank you.
Well, I can tell you about firstly, that's a fantastic question. Lots of urban areas are built very close to water bodies for a variety of reasons, partly historical. And now, when a lot of urbanization happens, a lot of the original natural ground is covered up and paved over. So when you pave over land and rainfall falls on it, the rate of surface water runoff is very fast. And so even when small rains happen, there is urban flooding. So this is a fantastic question. And we've seen this problem in many, many cities. For example, the city of Bangalore 2 years ago, there was some rains for a couple of hours, and then the streets were like rivers. So it's a big problem. I can tell you about one city that is making a push to do something about this. And there are other cities that are also doing some moves, but this one city that I want to call out is the city of Alleppey. The city of Alleppey is in the state of Kerala. It is crisscrossed by canals. And about 100 years ago, it was named the Venice of the East. Most people went about the city, commuted from one part of the city to the other in small boats. But starting around the 1970s, people started switching to buses, public transportation, or cycles, or scooters, and so on. And they started not using these canals. People started dumping solid waste into these canals. They started dumping sewage into these canals. And essentially, all these canals became glorified sewage and stormwater drains. But about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a major flood in Kerala in 2018. Right after the flood, people in the city of Alleppey decided that we must clean up our urban canals. So they've engaged in a very comprehensive, well thought out, phased out program of cleaning up these canals and involving the communities that live along the canals in the cleanup and the management of the canals after they are cleaned up. And I've been tracking this project for the last 4 years, since around the time they started from 2018. I've been coming and visiting these canals almost once a year, except I missed a couple of trips during COVID. But I've been coming and visiting these canals, and the transformation that is happening is amazing. So now, instead of water backing up into the houses and onto the streets when it rains, these canals absorb all the water and they take the water out into the Arabian Sea. This is what they were originally doing and meant to do, and that's happening. So, so there is glimmers of hope like this, and I'm sure that Alleppey will be written about quite a bit in the upcoming years of for why and how they managed to clean up, managed to solve their urban flash flooding or urban waterlogging problem.
Thank you, Anthony Jerry. Now I request Minati Pradhanji to offer vote of thanks.
Thank you. I, Minati Pradhan, on behalf of Swadhyaya Sahachakra and Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, would like to thank our today's chief speaker, Professor Jerry Anthony, for his very, very deep, current problems, what we all are facing regarding these issues. So enlightening us about it. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I would like to thank Professor Ananta.
Hello, Minati. Hello, Minati. Please put on your video so that Professor Anthony can meet you, if you don't mind.
I hope I'm visible now.
Yes, we can see you. Nice to see you.
Thank you. I would like to thank our moderator and mentor, Professor Anant Kumar Giri, for arranging this webinars for us. Thank you, Anant Bhai. I would like to thank all our Facebook platform users and the Zoom platform users for being present with us and learning with us. Thank you all, and pardon me if I'm forgetting somebody's name at the last and but not the least. I would like to thank our convener, Professor Randhir Kumar Gautam, for arranging and executing such a webinars so well. So thank you all and good night.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you very much.